Standard housing market analysis focuses on the immediate, the latest interest rate hike, local zoning changes, or monthly inflation reports. However, these factors fluctuate constantly. To find a more consistent trend, researchers have begun looking at data points recorded decades before a house even goes on the market. In 2025, a study published in the Journal of Finance analyzed property transactions and birth records spanning 3 centuries, from the 1500s to the late 1800s. The dataset focused on Amsterdam. This environment operated before the arrival of modern mortgage systems or central bank interventions, allowing researchers to isolate the raw relationship between population and prices. To test the consistency of the trend, the researchers compared their Amsterdam findings against historical rental indices from Paris. The results suggest that long-term real estate cycles were dictated by birth rates centuries before the invention of modern economic policy. The study's central finding, a 1% increase in birth rates, predicts a 4% increase in house prices relative to rents 25 to 29 years later. Conversely, 60 to 64 years after that same birth spike, house prices show a statistically significant decline. While these patterns emerged in historical Europe, they provide a framework for analyzing modern markets, specifically the current trajectory of South Korea. South Korea is currently recording the lowest birth rates in history. When the Amsterdam model is applied to this population data, it outlines a shift in housing demand that is mathematically set. The first phase of the housing cycle is driven by young adults. In their late teens and early 20s, this cohort moves into the rental market, increasing consumption without affecting property ownership. A behavioral shift occurs around age 30. This is the window where individuals typically attempt to settle down and move into home ownership at the same time. This creates market friction. Current homeowners, often from older generations, are not yet ready to vacate their properties. Building new homes is a slow process, and the construction industry cannot immediately scale to match a sudden large wave of buyers. This creates a bottleneck. When a large generation hits age 30, they face a wall of constrained supply. This imbalance between searching buyers and available homes forces prices to rise. These booms aren't necessarily the result of a sudden increase in collective wealth, but rather the physical inability of the housing market to accommodate a swarm of 30-year-olds. Now, move that same generation forward to the 60 to 64-year milestone. At this stage, the demographic begins to exit the market through downsizing, moving to assisted living, or passing away. These life events release decades of locked inventory back into the market simultaneously. Property values ultimately respond to the biological realities of aging. This creates a cooling effect that historical data shows is difficult to offset with short-term economic incentives. South Korea's high-density urban landscape is the current testing ground for this demographic law. Data from the Korean Statistical Information Service shows the current cohort of 30-year-olds, those born in the mid-90s, consists of roughly 700,000 people per year. This block of 700,000 buyers access the market's baseload, keeping demand high and maintaining elevated price levels. Current market volume reflects the peak of the 30-year demand cycle identified in the Amsterdam study. We can see the next phase by advancing to the year 2036, when the next generation reaches the home buying age of 30. By 2036, the number of 30-year-olds will drop to 450,000. This represents a loss of 250,000 potential buyers in a single generational step. The most recent statistics are even more stark. The birth rate for 2024 has fallen to approximately 254,000. By 2055, these forces collide. A wave of only 254,000 buyers will enter a market just as the 700,000-strong generation reaches their 60s and begins releasing their property. While economic policy and interest rates can be adjusted, the number of people aging through the system is already determined. The babies born today define the housing market of 2055, and the current trajectory points toward a historic shift in value.